today's video, we'll take a look at this Bible. It's a New Revised Standard Version Catholic edition in a single column layout with about a 9.5 point font. Glance at the box briefly here. As you can see, it's a clamshell box, easy to open. Here are the features. You can pause that to read it if you like. And the ISBN should be in focus. It's a fairly large volume compared to a St. Joseph medium size New American Bible Revised edition. It's a bit thinner perhaps, but certainly the footprint is larger. Here is another a New Revised Standard Version Bible. This isn't the Catholic edition. This is the Cambridge Bible with Apocrypha, which actually contains more books, more material than this. It is also smaller, not quite as tall. And here's an Ignatius Press Revised Standard Version, Second Catholic Edition Bible. And again, our Bible for today is larger than this one. The dimensions are 9 and 11/16 inches tall, 6 3/4 inches wide, and 1 13/16 inches thick. It's an illustrated Bible, and we'll take a look at the illustrations later on. But I'll let you look at the spine and the back cover and the page edges, which are patterned in this interesting way. And so we'll go to the inside. Text is formatted in a single column, 88 millimeters wide, with about 63 characters per line, and as many as 60 lines per column. The page dimensions are 236 millimeters tall, that's 9.3 inches tall, 6.3 inches wide, 160 millimeters. I like the print. The print is sharp, it's moderately bold, and it's quite dark. We will take a look at margins. Margins at the top of the page, from the top of the top line to the edge of the paper, including the headings, runs between 13 and 15 millimeters. The inner margin here can be as much as 24 millimeters, that's just under an inch. The outer margin, let's go to a page that shows it better. The outer margin here is 45 to 47 millimeters, that's about 1.8 inches. And at the bottom of the page, from the bottom of the text notes to the edge of the page, runs between 9 and 11 millimeters. The font in the text, which I think is quite attractive, is about 9.5 points in height. That's the capitals are that high. Lowercase letters are about 10.5 points. When I compare them to Times New Roman, the font size is advertised at 9.5 points. The line height is 3.53 millimeters, which equates to 10 points. So it actually is a relaxed line spacing, easy to read. Verse numbers are at the beginning of each verse, so they're embedded in the paragraphs. Those that start the paragraph, such as here, are actually somewhat darker, bolder than the ones in the middle of the paragraph. Text is line matched, so although there is some show through, it's not distracting at all. This is very easy to read. In the New Revised Standard Version, words that the translators supply for smoothing, which don't map to any particular words in the original language, are not in italic font. And in this particular edition, as you can see, we'll go back here to the Gospels. This is Luke. Words of Christ are in black ink. The New Revised Standard Version does not capitalize pronouns for deity, so here you see a he referring back to Jesus. It is not capitalized. There are page bottom notes and side column descriptions for the illustration. Those are in about a 7.5 point sans serif font. In general, there are no book introductions, at least I haven't found any, but I have found this note at the beginning of Esther. It's in about a 9.5 point sans serif font, and it deals with the additional material that's not found in the Hebrew canon. Books, the Bible do begin on a fresh page. So if we go to the back, look at some of the smaller books, you will see that they all begin on a fresh page. Here is 2 Peter, beginning on a page all its own. The book titles are at the outside of the edge of the column. Page contents are given beside the book title. Page numbers are in the outside of the page, as you see there. Headings at the top of the page, like this, false prophets and their punishment, are in about a 7.5 point font. And then the headings inside the text are in about a 9.5 point, much bolder font. The chapter numbers are large and bold, and they span about two lines of text. You'll find quotations from the Old Testament in the quotation marks here. They use the British style quotation marks, the single comma-like object that's raised above the line, rather than the double quotation marks that we have in American English. That's because this is an Anglicized text edition. The paper I like quite a lot. It is 39.4 micrometers in thickness. I estimate the paper weight at 36 GSM. There is a very light sheen on the surface, and perhaps you can see that on the left page as I twist it, because I have a lamp in the distance that's reflecting there, but I do not find that sheen troublesome at all. The paper is nearly white. I detect a light cream color. The show-through is visible. For instance, here you can see text from a column heading on the opposite side of the page, but again, with the line matching and the bold text, I don't find that distracting at all. There's minimal print non-uniformity. If I could find some that would be visible to the camera, I would show it to you, but I don't find any. There's a sewn binding. Stitching is visible in Genesis 10 and in the maps section. Let's see if we can show that to you. You can also see that it's a sewn binding by just looking at the way the paper falls apart into layers there at the side. But if we look at Genesis 10 in the gutter, perhaps you will be able to see the stitching there. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 separate lines of stitching there in the gutter. This Bible lies open easily in Genesis. There is no coaxing required. If you go to the middle of the book, because that inner margin is so wide, you really have no problem with having to read into a gutter, that is, read the text as it goes away from the eye into the gutter. So that's a very nice feature here as well. It may be difficult to see because it is black, but the headband here is black, as is the tailband. There are 2 ribbon markers, one black and one gold. They're shiny on both sides. They are 10 millimeters wide and 32.2 centimeters long. They do come out at the corners. I would have wished they were just a bit longer than that, but they certainly are long enough to be serviceable. At the end of the book of Revelation, you come to the NRSV Authorized Concise Glossary and Concordance. It spans 57 pages. It's in 3 columns here that are in about an 8.5 point font, and the words that are being defined are in bold ink. I'll let you look there at adder, and you can see that it gives you a definition. It's a poisonous snake. And it gives you a couple of references from the Bible where you can find the word used. It is not by any means a comprehensive concordance. At the end of the glossary and concordance, which you can see I'm giving you a preview of the maps there, we come to an illustration index. So there are, I believe if I remember correctly, 513 illustrations. A certain number of them are unique. Some of them are repeated. So this is where you would find them. It gives you both the chapter and verse of the book. So these are the illustrations in Genesis, and that's the chapter and verse number in brackets, and then the page number is listed after that. And that goes on for 5 pages in this 2-column format. It's in about a 9-point font. It looks slightly larger than the glossary. We come then to the color maps. These are copyright 2009, 2008 by Zondervan, International Mapping. They're not especially detailed. They are colorful and attractive. They're on glossy paper. Some people would prefer not to have glossy paper. They would prefer a matte paper for the maps because they want to write on them. I never write on maps, so that's not an issue for me. Here you can see the stitching again in the map section, and perhaps that's crisp enough for you to see it there. 5 lines of stitching. Maps do not go into the gutter. So they separate them. And that's the last map. So there are 7 of those color maps. It's a paste down construction with this coated paper liner. The cover, which we glanced at earlier, has 4 raised hubs. This is imitation leather. It's called Leather Soft. We looked at the patterned gilded page edges earlier. They're quite attractive, and it was interesting. This gilding did not require me to separate the pages. They just fell apart naturally on their own. If we go to the front of the Bible, we see again the paste down construction. There's a presentation page, Illustrated Catholic Bible. The half leaf, the full title page. It mentions, I believe, that it's the Anglicized text. And here's the copyright page. Let me see if I can show that with as few shadows on the paper as possible. So, imprint of HarperCollins Christian Publishing, NRSV. This is not the updated edition, which is due to be out, I think, in November of 2021. This is the original New Revised Standard Version text. And it has imprimatur from the President of the National Conference of Catholic Bishops in Washington, D.C., and from the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops in Ottawa. Printed in the People's Republic of China. This is the first edition in 2021. The design and typesetting are by 2K Denmark. So this is a comfort print font. Here is the table of contents. The Old Testament and the New Testament are here in their entirety. We have 73 books. We also have the Concise Glossary and Concordance and the Illustration Index that we've looked at before just a moment ago. About this Bible. So what is this Bible? This is a Bible featuring woodcuts that have been scanned directly from an original print copy of a notable Latin Bible published in Venice in 1574. But they made some changes to it. For instance, there was an uneven distribution of the illustrations with disproportional numbers in Genesis, Exodus, and the Gospels. So they redistributed some of those. And they've copied some of them. So there are 515 illustrations, which I think is different from the number that we saw earlier, of which about 460 are unique. I find them quite attractive. Here are the abbreviations they use for the books of the Bible. These are abbreviations that are used in the notes. Preface to the New Revised Standard Version Catholic Edition, which explains a bit about why Catholic Bibles have more books than Protestant Bibles and fewer books than Eastern Orthodox Bibles do. A little bit about the textual history of some of them, which language they were originally written in. Then something about the New Revised Standard Version Anglicized edition, the preface to it. And I guess one of the things I didn't realize is that there are differences not only in spelling between British and American English, but British English believes that the past participle gotten is obsolete and it avoids subjunctive verbs, which I'm a bit surprised by. And the reinstatement of the prepositions such as to and for often elided in U.S. idiom. That was kind of interesting. Then there's the New Revised Standard Version's preface to the reader. And we come to the Old Testament, to this illustration that you saw a few moments ago at the beginning of the book of Genesis. Now we'll take a close-up look at the font. It is nicely spaced. The tracking looks good as well. Bold font, attractive. I think it's very easy to read. The illustration you can see on the back side is creating a little bit of noise to the eye, but I don't think it's too bad at all. There are interesting features here, such as this little flourish at the end of the D. You see those at the ends of some sentences here, and not at the ends of others. So here, there isn't one here in a sentence that ends with sky, certainly not one at the end of the paragraph, and yet there is one down here at the bottom of the screen with kind. For comparison purposes, I've brought in on the left the Revised Standard Version Second Catholic Edition by Ignatius Press that you saw at the beginning of the video. It is a thinner font, not as bold, a bit smaller. On the left now is the Cambridge New Revised Standard Version Reference Edition. It also has a smaller font. This font is somewhat darker than the font in the Revised Standard Version Second Catholic Edition. The line spacing on the font on the left looks very nice as well. Definitely smaller and not as bold though. And now on the left I brought in the much smaller font in the St. Joseph medium-sized NABRE. Next we'll have a brief discussion of the New Revised Standard Version as a translation. And I'll start with my translation continuum chart that shows that the New Revised Standard Version is somewhat less literal than its parent, the Revised Standard Version, or its sibling, the English Standard Version, but quite a lot more literal than the New Jerusalem Bible, the Jerusalem Bible, or even the Revised New Jerusalem Bible. Literalness, by the way, is not the same thing as accuracy. It just has to do with whether the source language is translated in a word-for-word manner into the target language. Next, in terms of departures from the Masoretic text, the New Revised Standard Version does that quite frequently. It doesn't do it as often as the NABRE, but it does it much more often than the Revised Standard Version Second Catholic Edition. So it has a tendency to depart from the Hebrew in the Old Testament towards the ancient versions and the Dead Sea Scrolls. I have charts next that talk about the New Testament translation. This one has the Robinson-Pierpont Greek New Testament on the horizontal or x-axis, the Nestle-Aland 28th edition on the y or vertical axis, and this shows you that it tends to agree with the modern critically accepted Nestle Aland 28th edition to a high percentage, and it does not agree to a very high percentage with the Byzantine text, that is the text that's preserved in the majority of manuscripts in the old Byzantine Empire in the East. This chart shows the same information on the x-axis, the Robinson-Pierpont value agreement, but on the y-axis is agreement with Westcott and Hort. That's a 19th century Greek New Testament. New Revised Standard Version doesn't agree with Westcott and Hort as often as it does with the Nestle Aland 28th edition. Then this chart shows the agreement with Tyndale House Greek New Testament. That's an evangelical Greek New Testament that came out just a few years ago, and it's sort of in the middle of the pack there. And finally, this is agreement with Westcott and Hort on the x or horizontal axis, and Nestle Aland 28th edition on the y-axis. And again, agreement with Nestle Aland 28th edition is over 80%. But Westcott and Hort agreement is only around 54%. I have two other videos in which I discuss the New Revised Standard Version as a translation, so I'll not do that here. I'll simply point you to my New Revised Standard Version versus English Standard Version translation comparison video, and to a video that I've done that discusses the gender-neutral approaches of the NIV and the New Revised Standard Version. So let's take a look at a few of the illustrations, starting with this one. This is in Genesis 22. The description to the upper right reads, "But the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven and said, 'Abraham, Abraham,' and he said, 'Here I am.' He said, 'Do not lay your hand on the boy or do anything to him, for now I know that you fear God, since you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me.'" This illustration in Exodus is entitled "The Vestments of the High Priest," and so all the different objects that he's wearing are listed, or annotated with a letter and listed in the column to the right. This illustration is also from Exodus, and it's the golden calf and its altar. So there's the calf. Here in 1 Samuel, we have a woodcut that's entitled "David Kills Goliath." So there's David with his sword about to cut Goliath's head off. A woodcut showing the crucifixion has been placed here in Psalm 22. It's entitled "Jesus Dies on the Cross," and it quotes Psalm 22:1, my God, why have you forsaken me?" A woodcut showing the baptism of Jesus has been placed here in Isaiah 42, where it quotes Isaiah 42:1, "Here is my servant whom I uphold, my chosen in whom my soul delights. I have put my spirit upon him. He will bring forth justice to the nations." And there's the spirit illustrated as a dove. We come to Matthew's Gospel, and we see quite a number of illustration. Here's Matthew the Evangelist. Turn the page. There's a woodcut down in the lower left, bringing gifts to the child. Then two here, the angel appearing to Joseph, the escape into Egypt. Next page, we have several. The children of Bethlehem killed, the voice in the wilderness, Jesus tempted in the wilderness. When we come to Luke, we have Luke with his ox. We have Zechariah's vision, the sanctuary. The young Mary shall bear a son. This is the angel Gabriel appearing to Mary, I believe. This is Mary visits Elizabeth. A child has been born for us. So there's Christ child. Glory to God in the highest. Two here, Jesus' presentation in the temple, and Simeon taking the child Jesus into his arms, plus the boy Jesus in the temple. In John's Gospel, we start with John with his characteristic symbol. Then we have John the Baptist pointing to Jesus as the Lamb of God. We have the wedding feast at Cana. Jesus teaching Nicodemus. Here in 1 Corinthians 11, we have an illustration of the Last Supper, and it quotes 11:23 through 24, "For I received from the Lord what I also handed on to you, that the Lord Jesus, on the night when he was betrayed, took a loaf of bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and said, 'This is my body that is for you. Do this in remembrance of me.'" In 2 Thessalonians, we find this illustration of the lawless one, the one destined for destruction, who opposes and exalts himself above every so-called God or object of worship. And here finally, in Revelation chapter 1, you see an illustration of the judgment of the dead. "I saw the dead, great and small, standing before the throne, and books were opened, and also another book was opened, the book of life, and the dead were judged according to their works, as recorded in the books." So to summarize, let me say that I think this is a very nice Bible. I like it quite a lot. I think it has excellent paper. It has a sewn binding. The print, I find the print very attractive. I'm not a huge fan of single column formats, but I think this is not too wide, and the line spacing is generous enough so that this is perfectly readable. And if you're looking for a wide margin Catholic Bible, this may just be the edition for you. The only stumbling blocks could possibly be that the New Revised Standard Version does use gender-inclusive language, and if you're an old person like I am, you might find that just a little bit disconcerting. I can deal with it. It doesn't bother me that much. And certainly the New Revised Standard Version is a graceful and elegant translation. I do like it a lot. I just stumble a bit at its aversion to masculine pronouns. Sewn binding, very nice paper, nice print, good translation, and very wide margins. On the downside, I would say that it's somewhat large. It's a bit bulky, a little bit hard to transport, but it isn't huge. And again, it has so many positives, plus these very interesting illustrations from former times that are kind of unique. So with that, I'll conclude this review. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks very much for watching, and remember to like the video, subscribe if you aren't subscribed, and share information about the video on social media to help grow the channel. Thanks very much.